My mom threw me and my kids out of Christmas dinner, right after I spent $22,000 this year to keep them afloat. She said my sister deserved it more and slammed the door. So I canceled everything. I 34 female, divorced with 2 kids, ages 8 and 11. I work in tech and make good money. Not rich, but comfortable enough to help family when they need it, which, as it turns out, has been pretty much constantly for the past 3 years. Let me start with some background because this didn't happen overnight. My family has always had this weird dynamic where my younger sister Emma, 30, is treated like she can do no wrong, while I'm expected to be the responsible one who fixes everyone's problems. Emma dropped out of college twice, can't hold a job for more than 6 months, and has been living with our parents rent-free for the past 4 years with her boyfriend Jake and their 2-year-old daughter. Growing up, this favoritism was obvious, but I thought it would end when we became adults. Nope. Emma got the bigger bedroom, the newer clothes, the car when she turned 16 while I had to work at McDonald's to save up for mine. When she got pregnant at 27 without being married, my parents threw her a baby shower that cost more than my wedding. When I got divorced, Mom's first concern was whether I could still afford to help with their expenses. Our parents are both in their early 60s. Dad works part-time at a hardware store after being laid off from his factory job 3 years ago, and Mom hasn't worked since Emma moved back in because she helps with childcare. Their finances have been a disaster ever since Dad lost his job, but instead of Emma stepping up or moving out, they just expect me to handle it. And like an idiot, I have been. It started small in 2021. Mom called crying because they couldn't make their mortgage payment. Dad was too proud to ask, she said, but could I maybe help just this once? I sent $800. Then it was car repairs. Then medical bills when Dad had a minor heart episode. Each time it was just this once and we'll pay you back when things get better. Things never got better. The pattern became predictable. Every month there was a crisis. The water heater died. The roof was leaking. The car needed new tires. Emma's daughter needed daycare money. Each emergency was presented as life or death urgent, and each time I was the only solution they could think of. I remember one particularly low moment when I had to cancel my son's birthday party at the trampoline place because Mom called sobbing that they were going to shut off the electricity. I took the $200 I'd saved for his party and sent it to them instead. When I told my son we'd have to have his party at home with a grocery store cake, he just nodded and said, "It's okay, Mom. Maybe next year." That should have been my wake-up call. But Emma was pregnant again, and Mom kept saying how I was the only one who could help them stay afloat. This year alone, here's what I've paid for. $4,200 in mortgage payments over 6 months. $2,800 for Dad's medical bills and medications. $1,900 for car repairs on both their cars. $3,100 to prevent their utilities from being shut off. $2,200 for home repairs after their basement flooded. $1,800 on groceries and miscellaneous expenses. $6,000 for Emma's car when hers finally died completely. That's $22,000. $22,000 that I scraped together by working overtime, picking up freelance projects, and basically having no social life. My own kids haven't had a real vacation in 2 years because every extra dollar goes to keeping my parents' house from falling apart around Emma's family. The most infuriating part? Emma acts like she's entitled to it. Not once has she thanked me directly. When I paid for her car, she complained to Mom that I got her a basic Honda instead of something nicer. She actually said, if Jen can afford to help, why can't she help properly? When I covered their mortgage so they wouldn't lose the house, she posted on Facebook about how family comes through when it matters, without mentioning that I was the family coming through. Meanwhile, Jake works maybe 20 hours a week at a gas station and spends the rest of his time playing video games in my parents' basement. Emma hasn't worked since she moved back in, claiming she needs to focus on being a mom, as if single working mothers don't exist everywhere. The breaking point conversation started months ago. I began mentioning to Mom that I was struggling to keep up with all the financial help they needed. I wasn't saying no, just explaining that I couldn't pull money out of thin air. Maybe Emma could get a part-time job, I suggested once. Even 15 hours a week would help with expenses. Mom's response, Emma is dealing with postpartum depression. She can't handle the stress of working right now. Emma's postpartum depression seemed very selective. She had energy to go shopping with friends, post constantly on social media, and plan elaborate birthday parties for her daughter. But working? That was too stressful. I tried talking to Dad about it, thinking he might be more practical. Dad, I can't keep covering major expenses every month. My own kids need things too. His response, well, Emma's kids are younger. They need more help right now. As if my 8 and 11-year-old didn't need things like clothes that fit, school supplies, or the occasional fun activity. But the absolute last straw was Christmas dinner. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks. My kids were excited to see their grandparents and cousin. I brought a $200 ham, made 3 side dishes from scratch, and spent $150 on gifts for everyone. I even bought Emma's daughter a $60 toy kitchen she'd been wanting, because despite everything, I love my niece, and it's not her fault her mother is entitled. We got there around 2 p.m., and everything seemed normal at first. The kids were playing, Dad was watching football, Mom was fussing in the kitchen, but I noticed Emma seemed particularly smug about something, and Jake kept giving me these weird looks, like he knew something I didn't. I should have known something was up when Emma made a point of showing me her nails. She'd gotten an expensive gel manicure that morning. Early Christmas present from Mom, she said, with a satisfied smile. Meanwhile, I'd been doing my own nails with $3 drugstore polish because I couldn't justify spending money on luxuries. About an hour in, Emma corners me in the kitchen while I'm helping Mom with the rolls. So Mom told me you've been struggling financially, she says with this fake concerned voice, loud enough for Mom to hear. I looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Struggling? Emma, I just paid your car payment last month. Right. But Mom said you complained about money being tight when she asked for help with groceries. I had mentioned that I was budgeting carefully because of all the money I'd been sending them, but I never complained. I just wanted Mom to understand that I couldn't keep pulling money out of thin air. I didn't complain. I just explained that I can't. Look, I get it, Emma interrupts, stirring the gravy with an air of superiority. But maybe it's time to recognize that some people's needs are more urgent than others. I have a child to think about. Emma, I have 2 children, and I've given you guys $22,000 this year. She actually rolled her eyes. It's not like you can't afford it. You make like twice what Jake makes. She paused, then added with a smirk, besides, you chose to have kids after your divorce. I didn't plan for this. That comment hit me like a slap. Emma got pregnant accidentally, sure, but she'd been living rent-free with our parents for years before that. Her lack of planning wasn't my responsibility. Mom cleared her throat uncomfortably. Girls, let's not argue on Christmas. Before I could respond, Mom called everyone to dinner. I was seething but tried to keep it together for the kids' sake. We all sat down, said Grace, and started eating. The ham was perfect. The sides were delicious, and the kids were happy. For about 20 minutes, I actually managed to enjoy Christmas dinner. Everything was fine until Mom started talking about New Year's plans. Emma and Jake found this beautiful cabin rental up north, Mom says, her eyes lighting up. It'll be such a nice family getaway. Right on the lake with a hot tub and everything. That sounds expensive, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral while cutting my daughter's ham. Oh, it is, Emma says brightly. But Mom and Dad are helping us out with it. They figured we deserve a real vacation after the year we've had. I put my fork down carefully. They're paying for your vacation? We're all pitching in, Dad says quickly, not meeting my eyes. It's going to be a family trip. My stomach dropped. All of us? I asked. Am I invited? The silence was deafening. Emma and Mom exchanged a look, and Jake suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. My kids looked up from their plates, sensing the tension. Well, Mom says slowly, the cabin only sleeps 6. With Emma's family and us, it's already full. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. So you're paying for a family vacation that doesn't include half the family? It's not like that, Emma says, waving her hand dismissively. You can afford your own vacations. We can't. Besides, you're always so busy with work. You probably wouldn't have fun anyway. That's when something inside me snapped. I can afford my own vacations because I don't spend all my money bailing out my parents and buying my sister new cars? Don't be dramatic, Mom says, her face flushing. We appreciate your help, but what? But Emma deserves a vacation more than my kids deserve to see their grandparents. But Emma deserves a cabin rental more than my kids deserve new shoes that aren't from Walmart. My daughter looked at me with confusion. She didn't know that I'd been shopping at Walmart for their clothes while sending hundreds of dollars a month to keep Emma in Target outfits. That's enough, Dad says sternly, pointing his fork at me. This is Christmas dinner. You're being inappropriate. You're right. It is Christmas dinner. The Christmas dinner I brought the ham for, made 3 dishes for, and bought gifts for everyone while you guys plan vacations, I'm not invited to with money I helped you save by paying your mortgage. Emma throws her napkin down dramatically. God, you're so selfish. Not everything is about you. Can't you just be happy for me for once? Selfish? I've given you people $22,000 this year. Nobody asked you to, Emma shouts, standing up from the table. Actually, you did. You all did. Every single month for 3 years? Emma needs daycare money. Emma needs a car. Emma needs groceries. Emma needs, Emma needs, Emma needs. Mom stands up, her face red with anger and embarrassment. I think you need to calm down. You're ruining Christmas for everyone. The children are getting upset. She was right about that. Emma's daughter was crying, and my kids looked terrified. But I was too far gone to stop. I'm ruining Christmas? I'm not the one planning family vacations that exclude half the family while living rent-free in someone else's house. That's it, Mom explodes. You're being cruel and jealous. Emma has been through enough this year without you attacking her on Christmas. Emma has been through enough? What has Emma been through except sitting in your house rent-free while I pay all her bills? What exactly has been so hard about her life? Emma started crying louder. You don't understand what it's like being a single mom. I am a single mom. I'm a single mom who works full-time and still manages to support half this family. That's when Mom completely lost it. She started screaming about how ungrateful I was, how I was making Emma feel bad, how I was being dramatic and selfish and ruining Christmas for everyone. Dad joined in, saying I was embarrassing them in front of the kids and that I needed to apologize. Through it all, Emma sat there with this satisfied smirk, like she was enjoying the show. She'd orchestrated this whole thing, bringing up my finances in the kitchen, mentioning the vacation she knew I wasn't invited to. She wanted this confrontation. My son tugged on my sleeve. Mom, can we go home now? His voice was small and scared. That broke my heart more than anything. My kids were watching their mother get screamed at by their grandparents on Christmas because I dared to question why I wasn't included in the family vacation I was indirectly funding. Finally, Mom points toward the door, her finger shaking with rage. If you're going to act like this, maybe you should leave. Emma has been through enough this year without you attacking her on Christmas. She deserves better than this jealousy. Emma has been through enough? What has Emma been through except sitting in your house rent-free while I pay all her bills? Get out, Mom says, her voice ice cold. Just get out. Emma deserves better than listening to this jealousy. She's trying to build a life for her daughter, and all you can do is tear her down. I looked around the table one more time. Dad was nodding in agreement. Emma was crying crocodile tears while comforting her daughter. Jake was still avoiding eye contact. My kids were gathering their coats, ready to flee. You're really choosing her over your own grandchildren? On Christmas? We're choosing the person who isn't throwing a tantrum at the dinner table, Mom snapped. She actually walked over and opened the front door for us. Stood there holding it open while my kids and I gathered our coats and presents. The cold December air rushed in, making everyone shiver. Emma called out as we were leaving. I hope you're happy now. You ruined Christmas for everyone. Mom slammed the door behind us so hard it rattled the windows. I stood on their front porch for a moment, holding my kids' hands while they cried, listening to the muffled voices inside continue the conversation without us. Through the window, I could see Mom comforting Emma while Dad cleared our plates from the table like we'd never been there. I loaded the kids in the car and drove around for 20 minutes while they cried in the back seat, asking why Grandma was so mean and if we were ever going to see them again. Finally, I pulled into a McDonald's parking lot and made a decision. I opened my banking app and canceled every single automatic payment to my parents. The mortgage payment scheduled for January 2nd? Canceled. Dad's recurring medical payment? Canceled. The $300 monthly grocery allowance I'd been sending? Gone. The emergency fund I'd set up for them? Closed. Then I called their bank and removed myself from the emergency contact list for their accounts. Called their mortgage company and removed my name as someone authorized to make payments on their behalf. Called their utilities companies and removed my credit card as backup payment. We went into McDonald's and had Christmas dinner. Happy meals and apple pies, while my kids gradually stopped crying and started talking about the presents they'd gotten. My daughter hugged me and said, "It's okay, Mom. At least we're together." That almost made me start crying again. My phone started ringing 45 minutes later. First it was Dad. "Honey, your mom is upset. She didn't mean what she said. You know how she gets when Emma cries." I told him to call me back when they were ready to apologize to my children for ruining their Christmas and throwing them out of their grandparents' house. Then Mom called. "You're overreacting. Come back and we'll talk about this. Emma feels terrible." I told her I was done talking. I was done paying. And I was done pretending Emma's needs were more important than my children's dignity. Then Emma called, suddenly crying and apologetic. Suddenly she was sorry. Suddenly she realized how hard things must be for me. Suddenly she wanted to make things right. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she sobbed into the phone. "I just wanted everyone to get along. You wanted everyone to get along by making sure I knew I wasn't invited to the family vacation? It wasn't personal. The cabin was just small. Everything about this is personal, Emma. You've made it personal by treating me like a bank account instead of your sister. Too late for apologies. Too late for explanations. Too late for everything. The real meltdown started 3 days later when their mortgage payment bounced. Mom called sobbing. We're going to lose the house. How could you do this to us? Emma's daughter will be homeless. The same way you threw my children out on Christmas. Easily. But we have nowhere else to go. And the cabin is already paid for. We used the money from the Christmas fund. The Christmas fund. The money I'd been contributing to all year, thinking it was for family gifts. They'd used it to pay for a vacation I wasn't invited to. Emma can get a job. Jake can work full-time instead of part-time. You can get a job. Dad can work full-time. There are dozens of solutions that don't involve my money. But Emma is dealing with postpartum depression. She can't work. Emma's daughter is 2 years old. If she still has postpartum depression, she needs professional help, not a vacation cabin. You're destroying this family. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not funding it anymore. The calls continued for days. Each family member took turns trying different approaches. Dad tried guilt-tripping me about Emma's daughter, as if I hadn't been indirectly supporting her for years. Emma sent long texts about how she'd learned her lesson and would be more grateful. Mom alternated between crying and anger, sometimes calling me 5 times in one day. But the one that really got to me was when Emma sent a text saying, I hope you're happy. My daughter is going to be homeless because of your selfishness. That crossed a line I didn't even know I had. I screenshot that text and sent it to the family group chat, the one that included all my aunts, uncles, and cousins, with a message. Emma thinks, it's selfish that I won't pay her rent anymore. Here's a reminder of exactly how much I've paid this year to keep everyone housed, fed, and transported. Then I listed everything. Every payment, every emergency, every time I canceled plans with my own kids because someone in the family needed money. The time I couldn't afford summer camp for my son because Emma needed daycare money. The time I wore the same winter coat for 3 years because Dad needed medical bill money. The time I told my daughter we couldn't afford dance lessons because the family needed grocery money. I wrote about the family vacation I wasn't invited to, paid for with money I'd contributed. The manicures Emma got while I did my own nails. The new clothes she bought while my kids wore hand-me-downs. The group chat went silent for an hour. Then my Uncle Dave was the first to respond. Holy shit, Jen. I had no idea. My Aunt Sarah, $22,000? In 1 year? That's more than I make in 6 months. My cousin Mike, Emma, what the hell is wrong with you? How do you ask someone for money then not invite them on vacation? My grandmother, who rarely uses technology, but had someone help her read the messages. I am ashamed of all of you. That girl has given you everything, and you threw her babies out on Christmas. Suddenly, the whole family knew exactly what had been happening. They knew I'd been supporting 4 additional adults and a child while raising my own kids alone. They knew about the cabin trip I wasn't invited to despite funding the family that was going. They knew Emma had been living rent-free while I worked overtime to pay her parents' mortgage. The family started taking sides, and it wasn't the sides my parents expected. My Uncle Dave called my dad directly that night. I know because Dad called me afterward, furious. Your uncle thinks I'm some kind of deadbeat father. He said I should be ashamed of myself for throwing you out on Christmas, after everything you've done. My Aunt Sarah called my mom. Emma is a grown woman with a college degree. Why isn't she working? Why is Jen paying for everything while her own kids go without? My grandmother had someone drive her over to my parents' house. At 85 years old, she showed up unannounced to tear into all of them. You should be ashamed of yourselves. That girl has given you everything, and you threw her babies out on Christmas for some lazy child who won't get a job. Within a week, the extended family had turned completely against my parents and Emma. The comments on Emma's Facebook post went from supportive to brutal. Get a job. Stop mooching off your sister. Pathetic that a 30-year-old woman can't support herself. Emma made her profile private, then deactivated it entirely when family members started messaging her directly. My cousin's wife, who I barely knew, sent me a private message. I had no idea what you were going through. If you ever need someone to watch your kids so you can have a break, let me know. What your family did was unforgivable. Meanwhile, my parents were scrambling. Without my monthly contributions, they couldn't make their mortgage payment. They tried to get a loan, but their credit was shot from years of late payments and financial mismanagement, ironically caused by relying on my money instead of managing their own finances properly. They tried to get Emma and Jake to contribute, but they only make about $1,800 a month combined from their part-time jobs. Emma had never learned to budget because someone else was always covering the big expenses. Dad finally went back to full-time work at 62, taking a physically demanding job at a warehouse because it paid better than the hardware store. Mom got a job at a grocery store, her first job in 5 years. Emma finally got a full-time job at a call center, and Jake started working construction. But it was too little, too late. They lost the house in March. Emma, Jake, and their daughter moved in with Jake's parents, who live in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment, and were not happy about the arrangement. Jake's mother called me, furious. Your sister thinks she can just move in here with her drama and her kid? She's never paid rent in her life. My parents moved into a small rental house across town that costs more per month than their mortgage used to. The rental is old and cramped, nothing like the 4-bedroom house they'd owned for 20 years. The whole family is now working full-time for the first time in years, barely making ends meet, stressed out, and constantly fighting with each other about money. And me? I took my kids to Disney World over spring break with the money I would have spent on their mortgage. We stayed at a nice hotel, ate at sit-down restaurants, and bought the silly overpriced souvenirs without me panicking about the cost. My daughter cried happy tears when she met Elsa. My son rode Space Mountain 6 times in a row because we had the fast passes I could finally afford. We made memories instead of just paying other people's bills. We're going on a real vacation this summer, a week at a lake house with my college friends and their families. My kids will get to play with other kids, I'll get to relax with other adults, and nobody will ask me for money. My kids have new clothes that aren't from Walmart. My daughter is taking piano lessons and is amazingly talented. My son joined a traveling soccer team and scored 3 goals in his first game. I'm actually saving money for their college funds instead of supporting 4 grown adults who could work, but chose not to. The guilt trips continue, but they're getting weaker. Hard to argue that I'm selfish when everyone can see that my parents and Emma are all working now and managing to survive just fine. Turns out they didn't actually need my money. They were just comfortable taking it. I get updates through family members. And honestly, the updates make me feel vindicated rather than guilty. Emma and Jake hate living with his parents. His mother makes Emma clean the bathroom and do dishes, chores she never had to do at my parents' house because mom did everything. They're desperately trying to save money to move out, but keep spending money on unnecessary things like DoorDash and new clothes because they never learned to budget properly. My parents' rental house is small and outdated, but they're keeping up with payments now that they're both working full-time. Dad complains about his back constantly, but he's managing. Mom actually seems happier working. She's making friends with her coworkers and has something to do besides enable Emma. Dad's back problems flared up from the warehouse job, but instead of calling me for medical bill money, he actually went through his insurance properly and found out most of it was covered. Amazing what happens when you actually try to solve problems, instead of just asking someone else to pay for them. Mom keeps asking family members to talk sense into me, but nobody will do it anymore. Even my grandmother told her, "You made your bed when you threw those children out on Christmas. Now lie in it." My Uncle Dave has become one of my biggest supporters. He calls me every few weeks to check in, and always tells me how proud he is that I finally stood up for myself. "I wish I'd known what was happening sooner," he says. "I would have talked sense into them years ago." Emma tried a different approach last month. She sent me a long, handwritten letter about how she's grown as a person and learned to appreciate family more. She's been going to therapy, through her work insurance, look at that, and realizes she took me for granted. She wants to rebuild our relationship and start fresh. The letter was actually well written and seemed genuine. She talked about how she now understands how hard it must have been for me to work full-time and still help everyone else. She acknowledged that she'd been selfish and entitled. She even apologized for the Christmas dinner incident specifically. I was almost moved by it. Almost. Then I read the last paragraph. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything after how I've treated you, but Jake's parents are threatening to kick us out if we can't come up with first month's rent and a deposit for a new place. It's $2,400 total. I wouldn't ask, but I don't have anyone else to turn to, and I can't let my daughter be homeless. I'll pay you back once we're settled, I promise." I threw the letter away without finishing it. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from Mom that perfectly illustrated how little they've actually learned. Emma and Jake had broken up. Apparently, the stress of living with his parents and both of them working full-time for the first time in years had destroyed their relationship. Emma had moved back in with our parents with her daughter, and their small rental house was overcrowded and chaotic. Dad's warehouse job was killing his back, and Mom was having trouble keeping up with her grocery store shifts because she was watching Emma's daughter again during the day. Emma was working at the call center during the day and couldn't afford daycare. "We need help," Mom said, her voice tired and defeated. "Just temporary. Just until Emma gets back on her feet and finds someone to watch her daughter." How many times have I heard "just temporary" over the past 3 years? This is different. We've learned our lesson. Emma is working now. She's trying. Has she? Because it sounds like Emma is right back where she started, living with you and needing support, while expecting other people to solve her problems. She's going through a divorce. She needs family support, and her daughter needs stability. She had family support, $22,000 worth. You threw that support away when you chose a vacation over your grandchildren's Christmas. Mom started crying. I was wrong. We were all wrong. But please think about Emma's daughter. She doesn't deserve this. She's just an innocent little girl. That almost got me. Almost. But then I remembered my own kids' faces when they got thrown out on Christmas, and I steeled myself. Emma's daughter deserves a mother who works to support her, not a mother who expects other people to pay for everything. Emma's daughter deserves stability, which means Emma needs to grow up and create that stability herself, not keep moving back in with her parents every time life gets hard. So that's it? You're just going to let us lose everything? You already lost everything, Mom. You lost it when you decided Emma's comfort was more important than my children's dignity. The house was just stuff. This family was what mattered, and you threw it away for a vacation rental. I hung up, and I haven't answered their calls since. But the story doesn't end there, because life kept happening. 2 weeks after that call, I got a message from Jake's mother. Emma had been fired from her call center job for missing too many days. Apparently, she'd been calling in sick whenever her daughter was fussy or she was tired from staying up late on her phone. Without income, Emma couldn't contribute to my parents' rent, and they were struggling again. But this time, there was no one to call for help. The extended family had made it clear they weren't going to enable Emma's behavior, and I had completely cut off financial support. My parents both picked up extra shifts. Mom started working 6 days a week at the grocery store. Dad took on overtime at the warehouse despite his back problems. Emma finally found another job, at a fast food place this time, because her call center experience wasn't enough to get her hired anywhere better after being fired. The 3 adults and 2-year-old living in a small 2-bedroom rental house was chaotic and stressful. My parents were exhausted from working so much and taking care of a toddler. Emma was angry about having to work a job she considered beneath her. Everyone was on edge constantly. Meanwhile, my kids and I were thriving. My daughter's piano teacher says she has real talent and wants her to participate in a recital next month. My son's soccer team made it to the regional championships. I got a promotion at work, partly because I was able to put in extra hours without worrying about family emergencies anymore. I started dating someone, a wonderful guy I met through my son's soccer team. He's a single dad too, and when I told him about my family situation, he was amazed. You supported all those people while raising 2 kids alone? How did you even manage that? When I explained the favoritism dynamic and how it all ended, he shook his head. My parents would never choose between their kids like that. And throwing your kids out on Christmas? What kind of grandparents do that? He's right. What kind of grandparents choose their adult daughter's comfort over their grandchildren's feelings? What kind of parents throw children out of their house on Christmas because their mother dared to question being excluded from a family vacation? My kids ask about their grandparents sometimes, especially my daughter. She's more empathetic and forgiving than I am. I tell her the truth in age-appropriate terms. Grandma and Grandpa made some choices that hurt our feelings, and until they can apologize and show they've changed, we need some space. It breaks my heart, but I refuse to teach my children that you should accept being treated badly by people who are supposed to love you. I refuse to teach them that some people's needs matter more than others based on favoritism rather than actual circumstances. Last week, my daughter asked if we could send Grandma a birthday card. I told her we could make one, but we'd keep it for now and maybe send it later when things get better. She drew a picture of our family with a rainbow over it and wrote, "I hope everyone can be happy again someday." I hope so too, sweetheart. But happiness built on one person, sacrificing everything for everyone else's comfort, isn't real happiness. It's just a pretty lie that falls apart the moment the sacrificing person says no. The rest of the family has rallied around me and my kids in ways that make me realize what healthy family relationships actually look like. We spent Easter with my Uncle Dave's family, and it was wonderful. No drama, no one asking for money, just good food and people who actually appreciate each other. His wife made sure my kids had Easter baskets, and their kids included mine in all the games without any prompting. My cousin Mike's kids are the same ages as mine, and they're already planning summer activities together. They've invited us to their family camping trip in August. My Aunt Sarah invited us to her beach house in July. My grandmother sends my kids cards and small gifts just because, and tells everyone who will listen how proud she is of me for standing up for myself. This is what family is supposed to feel like: reciprocal, respectful, based on love rather than obligation or exploitation. The most telling moment came last month when my son needed emergency dental work after a skateboard accident. It was going to cost $800 out of pocket after insurance, and for the first time in years, I didn't panic about the expense. I had the money in my emergency fund, the fund that used to go to my parents' emergencies instead of my own family's. When I mentioned this to my Uncle Dave, he said something that really stuck with me. That's what that money was supposed to be for all along. Your kids' emergencies, not everyone else's convenience. He's right. That $22,000 should have gone toward my children's needs, their activities, their emergency fund, their future. Instead, it went to fund my parents' inability to say no to Emma and Emma's refusal to grow up and take care of herself. I don't know if my parents and Emma will ever truly understand what they lost. I don't know if they'll ever be willing to do the work necessary to rebuild trust. But I know I'm not going to sacrifice my children's well-being or my own financial security waiting for them to figure it out. For the first time in 3 years, I'm planning for my future instead of funding other people's present. My kids are thriving, I'm saving money, and I'm actually building a life instead of just managing everyone else's crises. The most recent update came through my grandmother last week. Emma lost her fast food job for attendance issues and is back to being unemployed. My parents are talking about moving to an even smaller place because they can't afford the rental without Emma's contribution to expenses. But instead of calling me, they're actually problem solving. Dad is looking into disability benefits for his back problems. Mom is considering getting a second part-time job. Emma is supposedly looking for work, though given her track record, I'm not holding my breath. The fact that they're not calling me for rescue money shows that they can figure things out when they have to. They just chose not to for years because it was easier to call me. This Christmas, we're going to my Uncle Dave's house. All the kids are excited. My Aunt Sarah is making her famous cookies, and my grandmother is bringing her legendary Christmas morning casserole. My new boyfriend is invited too, and my kids are excited to introduce him to the family that actually matters. It's going to be smaller than the Christmases I grew up with, but it's going to be filled with people who actually want us there. People who appreciate what we bring to the table instead of taking it for granted. People who would never throw children out on Christmas for any reason. My daughter asked me yesterday if I think Grandma and Grandpa are sad at Christmas without us. I told her honestly that I don't know, but that people who make hurtful choices have to live with the consequences of those choices. Maybe they'll learn to make better choices, she said hopefully. Maybe they will, sweetheart. But until then, we're going to focus on the family that already knows how to make good choices. The family that chooses love over convenience, respect over exploitation, and children's well-being over adult comfort. And that's worth more than $22,000 any day. The final irony? Last month, I got a promotion that came with a significant raise. For the first time in years, I have genuinely disposable income. Money that's not earmarked for bills, emergencies, or other people's problems. I'm using some of it to take my kids on that summer vacation. Some of it is going into their college funds. Some of it is going toward piano lessons and soccer fees and all the normal kid activities I couldn't afford when I was supporting half the family. And some of it is going into my own emergency fund. Because I learned the hard way that you can't take care of anyone else if you don't take care of yourself first. My family taught me that lesson, just not in the way they intended.